Robert Costa, national political reporter, Washington Post, is with us. Michael Crowley, who covers foreign affairs for Politico, is with us. And Hugh Hewitt of the Hugh Hewitt radio program is with us. Robert, what about the quote we just opened with? I said it was obsolete. It's no longer obsolete. Are we possibly, on a Wednesday in April, seeing a change in thinking, in worldview, a change inside the West Wing?
Brian, the president's remarks today were infused with faith and an embrace of global institutions, the same global institutions like NATO that he railed against during the presidential campaign. And this change of tone, this change in commentary about such institutions really reflects what's happening inside of the West Wing. The move away in some parts from the nationalism that's been championed by Stephen Bannon and others toward this more global view that McMaster, the National Security Advisor, different members of the cabinet, and his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, seem to share.
Michael Crowley, why is it so important for this president to keep repeating the world is a mess? Wherever you look, it's got problems, so many problems?
Well, there's some truth to it. It's also a convenient way of blaming his predecessor for really complicated issues he's facing that in some cases are probably going to get worse before they get better. So Syria, North Korea, any number of other problems that are difficult to solve. One way to explain why he's not making faster progress on them is to say, boy, Barack Obama really messed things up pretty badly. By the way, it used to infuriate Republicans when Obama would talk about the problems he inherited from George W. Bush. I do think this is sort of a, familiar ritual in the presidency. Brian, I just want to quickly maybe add a little value here on the first quote that you opened with on that NATO thing. I'm pretty sure that what Trump is referring to is something that happened in August that he has actually talked about before. He said that NATO didn't do enough to fight terrorism. In August, NATO appointed a new official who is a sort of intelligence coordinator amongst the NATO countries. And even at that time, Trump took credit for that and said, now they're changing their mission. It's because of Trump, and I like NATO better. So actually, this isn't quite as new as it seems. But in reality, PolitiFact has looked said really that appointment had nothing to do with Trump and actually wasn't a major change in NATO's mission. So maybe a lot of ado about nothing there, but significant that Trump did say that at the White House with the NATO Secretary-General right next to him. Clearly another vote of confidence in the institution. Whatever
change he claims to have seen inside NATO, he's going with it. And he has declared as of today it is no longer obsolete. Hugh Hewitt, here's what the president said when asked what the people of Europe would have to fear from their neighbor, Russia. I just want to start by saying, hopefully, they're going to have to fear nothing ultimately. But right now there is fear and there's problems. There's certainly problems. But ultimately, I hope there won't be fear and there won't be problems and the world can get along. Again, wherever you look at it, it's got problems, so many problems, and ultimately I believe we are going to get rid of most of those problems, and there won't be a fear of anybody. Your reaction?
It was a very positive statement by the president, Brian, about what he aspires to, something that Reagan might have said in '81 about what he hoped to leave behind in '88. I paid a lot of attention to what Secretary-General Stoltenberg did. He twice, not once, but twice, credited President Trump with spurring the NATO countries to reach to the 2%. And he noted that they had gone from 5 countries that were spending 2% of GDP on defense to soon to be 8. He noted that President Trump had been very supportive, and he also noted, he referenced his past experience as Prime Minister of Norway and how difficult it is to manage the Russian relationship. So I think what we saw there is Donald Trump growing in office into the leader of the Atlantic Alliance, meeting with people who are very well experienced with Russia and being very clear that he's not going to close the door to a good relationship with Russia, but it's not going to be easy terms for Putin. I also noted he's sending General McMaster to Afghanistan. That was little remarked upon thus far in the hour. That's significant. It reminds me of the Afghanistan review that President Obama undertook in 2009. That's a NATO mission as well. NATO is no longer obsolete. Music to my ears, Brian Williams.
Hugh Hewitt, Mr. Bannon could not have entered more visibly and taken his seat in the front row. What are you hearing? What do you think is at work with him?
Well, I believe that the president's New York Post interview was quite clearly a message to Mr. Bannon and to everyone in the West Wing that first among equals is Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump. And so fix the relationships with Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump. And I would defer to the estimable Mr. Costa on this and others. But I got that out of the New York Post interview, and I believe Mr. Bannon is, I don't know him. I think he's very smart and very capable and has a point of view that is useful in a West Wing that is as diverse as it is. But that message in the New York Post interview was very, very clear. First among equals, Jared Kushner.
And Robert Costa, I thought reading the New York Post quotes, it was the Manaforting of Bannon when the president said, again, he wasn't with us very long. He joined late. I had already beaten all the senators and governors. And besides, I was my own strategist.
That's what the president's expressing behind the scenes. Based on my reporting, he's reminding people in a nudge, in a way, to Bannon and his network inside and outside of the White House. In the president's view, he's always been where he was on trade and in immigration, and that Bannon came in as the strategist at the end. But Trump wants to remind people around him. Sometimes he likes to do this through the tabloids, through the media, that he is at the center and that he's not some puppet for a strategist. But I'm told also that Bannon was inside of the Oval today. You saw him in these vivid images sitting there in a suit in the first row. And so sometimes Trump embraces the chaos around him, likes to make sure people are in their place, but doesn't make moves yet. We'll have to see if he becomes like Manafort and becomes, let's say he leaves. We'll have to wait and see.
Michael Crowley, I'm duty-bound to get 30 seconds from you on North Korea. Tillerson appears today in Moscow, says that carrier battle group is always hanging around the Pacific. In effect, nothing to see here. Last night, the president used the word armada to talk about the firepower churning en route there. Which one should we believe?
Brian, I think it's a little hard to know. The answer might be both. In other words, I think Trump's strategy right now is to have Kim Jong-un and the North Korean leadership guessing a little bit about his intentions. So in other words, you know, is this the beginning of him throwing a punch, or is this sort of a maneuver that you would see from other administrations? It's psychological right now, and the mixed messages might actually be strategic or accidentally useful at a minimum.
Such a useful conversation coming out of what we just witnessed at the White House. I want to thank our guests.